Review the municipal bylaw framework to see whether any changes are needed to service level, matrix, or framework. And the clerk is the lead on this one.
Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Okay, so as CEO Mrs. Carlson advised, the bylaw enforcement service delivery review is completed every term of council. This framework is provided to provide council with an overview of current service levels, and it was a joint effort between internal staff as well as our bylaw services contractor.
Okay, thank you. Any comments at this time from members of council?
Here, and we're
go ahead.
just going to share. Sorry, we're just sharing our screen. Just one moment, please.
Yep, take your time.
So this overview will touch on the legislative framework, council's role, current composition of bylaw services, current practices, administrative fairness, overview of draft service level matrix, key performance indicators, and the enforcement trends. There's also been a backgrounder provided attached to the agenda for additional information. Next slide, please. So municipalities are creatures of the province. You can only enact legislation if the province has provided the authority to do so. So anything outside of what's been provided to us through provincial delegation would be outside of municipal powers. There are specific limitations set within legislations and regulations. So the bylaw must be within the ability of the province to authorize. The authority to act must be found within a provincial statute granting the specific authority to a municipality. So that's where your preamble and your bylaws comes into place, where it's the whereas section 5 of the Municipal Act, or whereas the section of the Planning Act within your bylaws provides the delegated authority to the municipality. And further, that the legislations are done within our own boundaries, so within the specific municipal boundaries. There's also been common law restrictions imposed by courts on the exercise of municipal powers by bylaws. So you're not able to make a bylaw that's made in bad faith. It needs to adhere to principles of procedural fairness, provide clarity, so you can't be uncertain or vague, and they have to be reasonable. Most of the powers granted to municipalities by the Municipal Act, whether it's regulatory or administrative, are discretionary. Though it's important to note that there are some of the matters which the municipality must undertake and they're considered mandatory. And municipal bylaws have many different uses. So whether it's administrative, so authorizing agreements, your procedural bylaw, procurement bylaw, or regulatory, so enforcing parking, fireworks, burning bylaw. There are many different aspects to what bylaws can be used for. This particular overview for our review of service levels is going to speak mostly to regulatory bylaws. So it's been generally accepted that where enforcement is discretionary, there's no private law duty to enforce, and enforcement can be done on a selective basis. Various court cases have found that negligence claims against municipalities can share common requirements with other negligent claims. So the claimant would need to establish that the municipality owed them a duty of care, breached the standard of care, and that a damage resulted from the breach. If the municipality is found not to owe a duty of care, then there'd be no liability for the negligence. So what that means is municipalities currently have the discretion to enforce the municipal bylaw, but they may not be immune from civil action, as it could be considered a breach of private law duty of care. And certain aspects that courts would consider in determining the breach would be whether there was a failure to consider enforcement, failure to prosecute, or if you were to identify a problem, proceed with issuing an order, but then not following through. This is very important to check the statutory authority within the bylaws to ensure that that authority exists. As there are updates with different legislation, it's important to continue to keep an eye on that, as certain bylaws may have been enacted under certain legislation that is no longer valid. So that's a periodic review of different bylaws should occur regularly. So the municipality does retain discretion with respect to enforcement proceedings for any of its bylaws passed. So although council may pass enact bylaws, it is still within their authority whether or not they wish to proceed with specific enforcement proceedings. Are there any questions?
Questions from members of council? Not at this time.
Okay, next slide, please. So for council's roles within bylaws, so council determines the levels of service, its capacity and resources, and bylaws guidelines are created to set standards of conduct. So you have proactive versus reactive enforcement. So proactive would be staff going out to search out concerns, whereas reactive is complaint-based. That is currently how the municipality does deal with our bylaw concerns unless it's a health and safety matter. Council approves the resources and capacity. So an updated service matrix has been included in the presentation, and that was developed during the last term of council, and it outlines different service levels and violation priorities. There are specific legislative considerations that council needs to consider when developing new bylaws. However, they also have to consider community expectations. As communities change over time, so do expectations. What may have been a useful bylaw at a time may no longer be so. So that is why it's something to continue to review. Certain questions to consider when considering new regulatory bylaws would be, how is the bylaw going to affect the community? What's the public engagement process? Is this going to impose any specific restrictions on areas or groups of people? What is the cost to administer the bylaw? Can the current capacity levels within staff handle that, or would be additional resources required? And then, is the municipality prepared to enforce the bylaw and enforce it consistently? For guidelines, the current framework set by council is based on primarily reactive bylaw enforcement. So staff receive complaints and we proceed with investigation. Proactive enforcement from the municipality is generally involved with staffs or contractors initiating primarily to deal with matters involving health and safety or mandated responsibilities. So the building department, if they're out on an inspection, they happen to see something based on their mandatory requirements, would proceed proactively. And under standards, so the council has approved different standards through, there is a municipal complaint policy. We do have a contract for bylaw enforcement services with tenant security, and then there are different policies for council and staff. Further, there is a property standards appeal committee that does make up all members of council. It's appointed each term in the event that it's required for bylaw enforcement. Any questions?
Questions from members of council? Nope. Go ahead.
Next slide, please. So for compensation of services, the clerk's department takes lead with administrative and education duties. So our department deals with the reporting, tracking, communicating, as well as drafting of bylaws to bring to council. We have implemented a citywide software that has assisted in managing and tracking bylaw complaints. So that has streamlined processes. And our bylaw enforcement officer, who's contracted out, he does actually have also have access to that program. So it has been great for streamlining concerns and keeping files up to date. So our bylaw officer who's contracted out, that is tenant security, and they deal with the enforcement and investigation aspects. So providing education or issuing fines. And there are also other municipal departments that are involved with bylaw complaints, as there's different bylaws where other departments have jurisdiction. So whether it's the burning bylaw, building code, building bylaw, things like that. Any questions?
Questions at this time? No. Please continue.
Okay, next slide. So bylaw enforcement practices. So the municipality receives complaints in through, we do have an online reported system. Individuals can also come into town hall and fill out a form, or if they call in over the phone, we can enter it in through the system as well. We do not accept anonymous complaints unless it's health and safety. And any contact information provided by individuals is protected under MFIPA. Our personal information is kept confidential, and the services are generally Monday to Friday. However, we do after-hour patrols of certain areas when required. And tools for compliance, there's education, which a majority of our complaints have been successfully dealt with through education. So there's proactive education. So directing individuals to resources on the website, publishing in the hub, as well as on social medias. And then there's also the reactive education, where we have bylaw enforcement go out and speak to individuals after the fact a complaint's been made. Any questions?
Any questions at this time? No, not seeing any.
Next slide.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Need, go ahead, please.
Just with the fines and the summons to court, at what point after the education aspect does, I'm guessing it's a process and it's a staged approach. At what point would the fines or the summons to court kick in?
Yes, so through the chair, yes, there are different aspects as we are trying to be education first. We do go through that process. So if the individual isn't aware, some people may not know that, hey, I didn't know that bylaw existed. So we'll proceed in that matter. Orders are more to do with orders to remedy for property standards. So there is a process where bylaw has been trying to work with the individual, giving them time to rectify the concerns. And then if an order was issued, there's always the appeal period and working through it. They still have time to comply. And then if they, at that point, if it's property standards, they do have the appeal right to appeal to the Property Standards Committee if they're not agreeable with what's been issued. Staff and bylaw enforcement will try to work with the property owner so that they will clean up the property rather than have to go to the point of enforcing the order, which then brings in a third-party contractor to clean up the mess and rebuild them. Summons to court. There's different aspects where that would occur if there's no fines available. There'd be a whole lengthy process because you take the summons to court, the court would have to summons it, bring them before a judge. Since my time here, I've not run into that yet, but yeah, there's different, we go educational first to try to get individuals to comply that route. We don't go immediately to the order, fines, penalties, so. Okay, so the bylaw enforcement framework is based on administrative fairness. So this framework does not supersede the bylaw itself. It's used for guidance and focuses on voluntary compliance, education, and outreach. So it provides opportunity for discretion on enforcement decisions when exceptions are required. So each complaint is different. Enforcement is decided based on individual cases. So you may have similar complaints come in, however, everyone is a little different. So the framework is to provide consistency. So you have similar cases being treated similarly. We have noticed since this framework has been implemented last term of council, that has assisted greatly with keeping things consistent for enforcement purposes. So bylaw enforcement and staff work with the tools available to achieve the compliance. So yes, that's just another thing so some individuals don't know bylaws exist, certain bylaws exist. So providing them with the time of, hey, here's the education. Has it been their first complaint? Have we worked with them multiple times trying to get certain matters rectified? So the framework provides, also promotes the efficient use of staff resources, and then also to try and manage public expectations with clarity and detail on how and why certain aspects are enforced. And so this guide work does provide discretion to be exercised. So it provides different discretion factors such as safety, history of attempts for compliance made by bylaw enforcement, available resources, the coordinating involvement of other agencies. So there may be a certain instances where there's other parties involved in the matter. And then whether you have municipal jurisdiction and authority over certain avenues, as it'll be explained a little bit later. There are certain things that individuals reach out on believing that's bylaw enforcement, and it's not within municipal jurisdiction for bylaw enforcement services. The municipality does retain the discretion with respect for enforcement proceedings, but residents have independent legal rights that they can explore and pursue. And under the Municipal Act, they can initiate legal proceedings to enforce municipal bylaw if they do not agree with the municipality's view on enforcement. Any questions?
Any questions at all? No, not seeing any.
Next slide. So there was a service level matrix included with the presentation materials. That matrix was established during the last term of council. It incorporates the most common bylaw complaints that have been received in the last 3-year period. And it provides an overview of different service levels and violation priorities. So there's patrol, which is high priority. So that would be periodic or routine patrols throughout all or parts of South Huron to seek out violations. Proactive, which is medium priority, and that's a violation observed during the course of duties. And reactive and complaint-based, which is the majority of the municipal process, and as investigation if initiated upon a valid complaint received. Under violation priority criteria, so there's high, something deemed as high would be likely to cause a health and safety issue to the public. Medium is the potential to cause health and safety issues to the public or to negatively impact the community. And then low is unlikely to cause health and safety or negative impacts to the community. So you have your different service levels and then different priorities to them. So certain bylaws may be considered a high priority where it's could be a health and safety concern. So it's kind of timeline for staff immediate to get bylaw out compared to the lower priority bylaws. Any questions?
Questions from members of council? Councilor Oak?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. So the service level matrix, that was part of the package. There's a list there, obviously, with the different patrol, proactive, reactive. And then there's a series of half a dozen or so that are highlighted. I'm not sure if you're gonna come to that yet. Just wondering, are those ones that need to be updated right away, or what is the process for those?
Yeah, through the chair, that's actually on the next slide that I can go over. Okay, so those particular bylaws that are highlighted on the service level matrix, staff had reviewed the service level matrix to determine whether there are certain bylaws that are high priority for staff review and bring back for updating. These particular ones were noted by staff that they require higher priority for review to come back to council, whether it's for updated through legislation or different practices to try and streamline processes for enforcement. So that's where those ones come into effect.
Thank you.
Questions? No? So on the next slide is an overview of key performance indicators. So those were brought into effect during the last term of council. So it's a way of monitoring, measuring operational performance for standard levels of service. These are tracked and included in the quarterly reports to council. And it's to look for areas of improvement to assist in narrowing down areas of concern, and I'll provide for staff to focus on implementing and streamlining processes. I would note that the one KPI that's regarding 95% of complaints to have a plan in place to resolve the concern within 5 business days. We did not use a resolution of matter within 5 business days, as it is quite often that bylaw complaints take a little bit longer than a week to rectify, and also that some of them fall out of municipal jurisdiction.
Any questions at this point? Not seeing any, please proceed.
So on the next slide, staff did note some different enforcement trends. We have had a large inquiry of increase in questions regarding having backyard chickens. There's a current bylaw in place that speaks specific to residential areas of Exeter only. We've also had an increase in calls regarding homelessness. So this would be an item that is not a bylaw enforcement matter. It's a social issue that many municipalities are dealing with. And there's also been a recent court case ruling that in regards to municipal bylaws, specifically trying to enforce matters dealing with homelessness can be against the Charter of Life, Liberty, and Security. We've also noted increased expectations from the newer residents who have been reaching out and filing complaints. They have different expectations from where they were previously residing, usually in larger centers, where it may be proactive bylaw enforcement, a full-time bylaw department, could be 24-hour service levels at that point. So they're getting used to the change in service levels coming to a smaller community. And we've also noted that there's been an increase in neighbors disputes. So you have individuals who may not get along with their neighbors and they are calling in bylaw complaints on each other to kind of deal with that. Any questions?
Questions, Councillor Dietrich?
Thank you. How does that neighbor dispute bylaw work out?
Through the chair, so there's no neighbor dispute bylaw. We're just noticing that you will have an individual call in and file a complaint against their neighbor. And then following that investigation, that individual will reach out and file a complaint against the other neighbor. So the municipality does not release the details of who filed the complaint. But in certain cases, it may be easy to tell perhaps, but so then you have them reaching out and filing and it's just them going back and forth filing complaints against each other. So we're finding it's more a neighbor dispute, not necessarily a bylaw enforcement matter, but bylaw does go out and investigate to see is that a valid concern.
Great, thank you. Any other questions? Deputy and then Councillor Vaughn.
Yeah, just a comment. I didn't see anything in there about an Airbnb bylaw. Do we have something or I'm expecting, maybe it's something we should look at. Thank you.
Yes, so through the chair, we do not currently have a bylaw that deals with short-term rentals or Airbnbs. Staff are bringing a report back with some information to a May meeting for council. But at this time, we do not have a bylaw that deals with short-term rentals.
Thank you.
Councillor Vaughn.
Yes, thank you for the report, Alex. I had similar question as Deputy Mayor Dietrich about the short-term rentals. So nice to hear we're seeing a report in May. Along that same line, in terms of newer bylaws, Port Blake, we're looking at a different kind of system for the Port Blake Park for this year and hopefully in future years as well, which will demand some kind of proactive enforcement to align with the payment structure that we're putting into place. And so my understanding is that means we're going to need a whole new bylaw for that park and that situation so that either our contracted bylaw people can write tickets or potentially even maybe our staff can write tickets. So I'm just like the short-term rental one, I'm wondering about the radar screen for that one.
Yes, through the chair. So the current parking bylaw does not have any provisions to deal with like prepaid meter parking. There is the option, staff could investigate different options available. However, the current bylaw would not be able to deal with the enforcement of that. It's not kind of written in there. So whether it be its own separate bylaw or incorporated by an amendment, I do know that staff are operationalizing operationalizing, sorry. I apologize. different aspects that was discussed at council recently. But at this point in time, the current bylaw, parking bylaw, would not speak to that. And unless the CAO may have further comment.
Ms. Masu Coulson.
Through the mayor or the chair, it is on our radar and it will take a new bylaw. And that does take a bit of a process because it will come to council first and then it will, we need to send it to the Attorney General to get approval. So it likely will not be in place for this year, but it is in process.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Follow-up?
Thank you. No, that's good. Just, that's good.
Any other questions before we move on? Not seeing any, please proceed.
So yeah, that's the high level overview. So the last part would be the recommendations. So we'd be recommending that the committee of the whole receive the backgrounder and presentation for information, and that the committee of the whole recommend to council the approval of the bylaw enforcement framework and endorse the service level matrix.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments at this point or questions from council? Go ahead, Councillor Dietrich.
The enforcement, like the services that we have, do they do it all like property standards and like every bylaw they enforce? Yeah.
Madam Clerk?
So through the chair, yes, our bylaw enforcement is through a third party contractor. So, and as we are complaint based, as complaints come in, depending on what it is, it will be looked at through staff and then provided to the bylaw officer to proceed with the investigation. There are maybe some that are dealt with internally through other departments, but the bylaw officer does deal with a majority of them.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions at this time? Councillor Oak.
So I know that, thank you, Chair. I know there's some recommendations coming up here. With the recommendations, the service level matrix, is it the understanding that those the highlighted ones are going to move ahead with a report sometime through the next year? Is that the understanding?
Through the chair, so the understanding is any of those that are highlighted would be reviewed and brought back to council this term.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions at this time? Not seeing any. There's nothing further. Turn to Ms. Masu Coulson.
The South Huron Committee of the Whole receives the Bylaw Services Strategy Review Backgrounder and Presentation for Information, and the South Huron Committee of the Whole recommend to Council the approval of the Bylaw Enforcement Framework and endorse the service level matrix.
And a mover, please. Moved by Councillor Neves, second by Councillor Dietrich. Any discussion? Call the question. All in favor? Carries of 7. Thank you. Turn to staff for 4.2.1.
Just as a bit of an introduction for this, council approved a fire master plan in September 2021 and then established fire services advisory committees, 2 of them actually, and the fire chief will be going through those. So the committees were set up to act as liaison between the fire service and council and to provide recommendations. This committee of the whole has been set to report out on the matters that were scoped in the Fire Services Advisory Committee terms of reference, approved by council, and the terms of reference were approved by council on June 19th, 2024. And these were based on recommendations that came out of the Fire Master Plan. Okay, and the fire chief will be taking lead on this one.
Chief, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Mayor Finch and members of the committee. First slide, please. So tonight, or this afternoon, we're going to take a high-level overview of the Fire Master Plan, the Community Risk Assessment, those 2 topics, and were done in 2021. There was a Fire Service Advisory Committee to Struck that was tasked with going over those recommendations, and we'll take a look at that. We'll give you the status of the recommendations in the Fire Master Plan, the role of the Fire Service Advisory Committee, and what our next steps are going forward. So like I said, the master plan was done in 2021, and some of the high level items we'll list here. So we retained Emergency Management and Training Incorporated to conduct a master fire plan. The previous plan was done in 2012. Emergency Management and Training based out of Barrie, Ontario. And they sent their team into South Huron to gather information take a look at our current buildings, apparatus, training modules, policies, procedures, agreements with our neighboring municipalities, and basically everything that we do. They also did a community risk assessment, which they provided recommendations, and we went through those as well. Just to note, emergency management training, their team lead was Gary Mossberger. He's a district chief in London Fire. He was the team lead that met with us, worked with us through the plan, and saw the delivery of the plan. He started his career in a rural fire service in Baden, Ontario, prior to going full time in London. So we did have someone with rural knowledge, which was good to deal with. So the Fire Master Plan, it's a tool to guide us in the future, to look at the priorities, the objectives of the fire department. It identified requirements on the growth, the trends. They looked at our call volume, what types of calls we were doing, the regulatory compliance, regulatory requirements, which are constantly changing in the fire service. That's one guarantee, and the financial capabilities of the municipality. In total, there was 47 recommendations made in that Fire Master Plan. Again, the community risk assessment, which was a legislated document to have completed by 2025. We were probably one of the first in the province to have it completed. So that was one thing off the box, which was actually really nice to have done. Again, looks at different things that affects the people and the municipality. They looked at different things from traffic to water hazards, different risks that we had. So it was actually hand in hand, two documents that went together. And in September of 21, South Huron Council approved the master plan and the community risk assessment. Kendra? So here's a high level overview of those the plans and the recommendations from the committee. This stuff was related to the disposition of the Huron Park Fire Station, and there is committee and council resolution documents to attach there to follow. So the terms of reference in 2022, when the Fire Service Advisory Committee was established, was to work with the fire chief and make recommendations on the following topics: review and assess the recommendations of the master fire plan, review each priority and risk from multiple lenses, and make recommendations to council that are not only sustainable, but viable. The Fire Service Advisory Committee, under the 2022 terms of reference, completed the above mandate and provided council recommendations in a finding report July 18th, 2022, and was dissolved. Next slide, please. 2023 Fire Service Advisory Committee, again, to work with the fire chief and act as a liaison between the fire service and council, provide recommendations to council on matters pertaining to the coordination and collaboration with our neighboring municipalities to look at fire services from a regional perspective. This is ongoing, and we have operationally, with the deputy mayor, has been appointed as our liaison. The disposition of the Huron Park Fire Station building and lands based on the existing agreement. The replacement for the Dashwood Fire Station. The relocation or the viability of an addition on the existing site of the Exeter Station, which was discussed at a high level by the committee. Staff implementing recommendations at the existing station. And the review of the development charges related to the fire services. This was completed by the committee. And provide input and feedback to the fire chief and other matters related to the fire service when requested. So the Exeter Fire Station. One more, please. Other way. Go to Exeter Fire Station. One more. There we go. So the Fire Service Advisory Committee discussed the following fire master plan recommendations related to the Exeter Station. Recommendation 29 was related to upgrades in the existing station. And recommendation 30 was a replacement station relocated to the area in the south end of Exeter. The committee and staff discussed heavily that the Exeter station can accommodate some of the fire master plan recommendations, and in addition to the existing building was discussed and could provide adequate space for items that were listed in recommendation number 29 that cannot be accommodated in the existing space. Next slide, please. So recommendation 29, just a quick high level overview of this, was to install a diesel exhaust extraction system for the apparatus. We've initiated identifying options for that system because of the way the apparatus bays are laid out. We're looking at ceiling mounted extractors, and a company has been engaged to provide us with some costing on that. The other option is the hoses that actually connect to the exhaust pipes on the trucks, which would see one swinging in the way of the second truck coming out behind it, so causing problems. So that's why we're investigating the ceiling mount. Renovation of the current bunker gear area to allow a negative pressure room for additional space to accommodate the officer gear relocation from the apparatus floor. So for those of you that have been to the station, the back hallway is the bunker gear, and the officer's bunker gear is located in the first bay at the back of the truck. So we have started to mediate those problems. We've put a separation door between the washrooms and the back hallway to keep some of that stuff out. We're working with the contractor as well to provide an exhaust fan in that hallway to start alleviating some of those concerns. Another recommendation was a washer and dryer for general cleaning of clothes. So that's your street clothes that you would wear to the fire hall. At this time, we have no progress on that. There is limited space in the hall. So we did look at a couple of options if there was an addition proposed to that facility that would allow for that. The idea is to have a change of clothes at the hall so that your contaminated clothing is not going back in your vehicle, back to your house, back to where you go. The motto that we're using this year is to shower within the hour to get those carcinogens off. So hence why we're looking at a separate change of clothes that could be laundered at the station. Next slide, please. One more. So the Huron Park Station back in July of 2021 was closed due to health and safety concerns, and staff were redeployed. Oh, sorry. Forgot. Do we have any questions about the Exeter Station before we move on?
Any questions regarding Exeter Station? Okay, not seeing any at this time. Thank you.
Okay. So again, Huron Park Station closed in July of 2021 with health and safety concerns, and staff were redeployed to the other stations successfully. This is just a high level summary of those activities relating to the Huron Park Station and how the committee worked through those recommendations. Next slide, please. So the background around the Huron Park Station: to provide council information on the restrictive covenant agreement on the Huron Park Fire Station lands at 421 Canada Ave and the Fire Service Committee recommendation. Staff have explored the following committee options for the Huron Park Fire Station: transferring the ownership of the lands back to Infrastructure Ontario, declaration of surplus lands and releasing the property for purchase before the end date of the restrictive covenant agreement, which is 2029, and that's if authorized by Infrastructure Ontario. So the next slide, based on information gathered by the staff and the consultation with Infrastructure Ontario, the following options exist for the Huron Park Fire Station. Number one is to demolish the building and surplus the lands. Number two is to demolish the building and lease the lands. Number three is to surplus the building and lands as is. Number four is to demolish the building and retain ownership of the lands. Number five is to do nothing and lease the building and lands. And number six, do nothing and continue own and maintain the building and the lands. Any disposition or release of interest requires approval from IO. Do we have any discussion or questions on the Huron Park Fire Station?
Councilor Oak, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, we've had numerous discussions as the fire committee on the various options. On with the station and I think there's there's been a delegation that was done by some council and staff to our member of parliament, Lisa Thompson, at the Roma conference and about taking a look or maybe helping us to look into the restrictive covenant that's in place to see about the removal of that. I guess while that process is underway right at the moment of being looked at, I think I'd like to see us move forward with option 3, surplusing the building and seeing if we could sell it as is at this time as we're moving forward. But that would be just that's just my interpretation of these options.
Chief, comment in regards?
So yes, thank you, Member Oak, for that. We did meet in January at the Roma conference with Lisa Thompson, our MPP, and I believe that the CAO has followed up and just waiting to hear back if that restrictive covenant could be lifted or if it would. But I think it would be, some type of it's not something that would be quick overnight type of thing. It's something that would take some time, but we have reached out at staff level, so we're still waiting to hear back from Lisa.
Councillor Oak. And then
Yeah, just as a follow-up, yeah, no, thank you for reaching out and following up on that. And the option 3 of surplusing the building and the lands as is, with the understanding that the people would know that that restrictive covenant would still be in place if it were to be sold. I assume that would be the as is would be as is sort of thing with all the rules that are in place for that facility.
so, Ms. Basula Colson.
Through the chair, yes, it is quite a long process because there has to be a surplus. Council has to declare the property surplus, and there's a process to that as well. And then after that, the agreement of purchase and sale will have to include all the clauses as far as a participation agreement. Then all of the documents, once council receives a conditional approval, will have to go to IO, Infrastructure Ontario, and they'll have to go through their whole process, and then they'll either release it from us and let the interest flow. So I was told it's probably gonna be six months to a year for that process, if we are even in the place of having a valid agreement, let's say. So that's just to provide council or the committee, a bit of a timeline on that.
Councillor Oak.
Just and there would have to be an appraisal done on the property as well.
That is correct.
Any other questions at this time? Okay, please proceed, Chief.
Thank you. So something I guess we'll be looking for is the next steps and a recommendation from council on that building. So if there's any more questions on the Huron Park site before we move forward?
Any questions? Councillor Vaughn, go ahead, please.
Yes, I just wanted to understand if there's, I realize we're dealing with Lisa Thompson and hoping to get an answer back soon. But is there any reason why we should not make a recommendation to council to go forward with one of these options at this point before we even hear from Ms. Thompson?
Ms. Basula Colson, comment?
Through the chair, no, there is no reason why council or the committee could not make a recommendation. As all of these are the options that are possible. And the building remains where it is, and it is deteriorating. So the sooner that a decision can be made, the better. Unless there's more information that is required.
Councillor Vaughn, follow up.
Yes, I just wanted to say that, yes, the longer the building sits there unoccupied, it's going to continue to deteriorate. So I, for one, would be agreeable to support option 3. and get the ball rolling, especially since it's going to take a 6 month to a year timeframe.
Okay, any other comments in regards to the conversation? That's Chief, go ahead.
Thank you. Just one topic, as Councillor Vaughn or Member Vaughn has indicated that the building's deteriorating. We are aware that the roof is leaking and that services have been shut off to that building because the boiler system is no longer working. So there is no heat in it. The only thing that remains is the hydro. So the water and the heat were shut off due to operational constraints with the repairs there. Were going to be extremely costly. So the roof apparently was leaking long before my time. And the water was collected above the ceiling tiles by someone every day. So this was kind of a surprise when Norm Hyde retired that nobody was dumping the tin foil trays of water. So that's how we found out that the roof was leaking. So it's been in bad shape for a long time and it's only getting worse. So.
Thank you. So at this point, the discussion to go to option number 3. And Chief, do you have any comments on option number 3? Very well. Do you wish to make that motion, Councillor Oak?
Yeah, I make that motion. Thank you.
Very well. And Madam Clerk, could you read the motion before I go to a seconder?
The South Huron Committee of the Whole recommends to council direction to staff to proceed with option 3 for the Huron Park Fire Station.
So moved, Councillor Oak. Seconded by Councillor Vaughn. Did you want to second that? Thank you. Any discussion? Deputy?
I guess my only question is how do we sell something as is when we don't, to me, I don't understand. We don't even own it. Infrastructure Ontario owns it. So I guess that's where I'm confused a little bit as to how we can put this as a surplus land when it's not ours to do that. Thank you.
Ms. Masuha-Colston, comment?
Through the chair, this is possible through the an agreement of purchase and sale. It'll be conditional upon the approval of IO. Now, the municipality does own the lands. It's just that there's a participation agreement that's registered on it. And so in order for the sale to go through, that IO will have to agree. If in fact IO, Infrastructure Ontario, does not agree, then the sale is void. But that's all pieces that will be included into the agreement of purchase and sale through the solicitors. Is that clear?
Well, any other questions? Councillor Oak?
And just for clarification as well, if it were to sell and they agreed to it, IO at this point in time, they would receive the funds, or how does that work?
Ms. Masuha-Colston?
There are provisions that the actual sale, the legal fees may be able to be deducted from the proceeds, but all proceeds, IO has the rights to all the proceeds. Whether or not they take them, likely they will, but they do have first right to any proceeds.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion? Okay, Councillor Dietrich.
Did we lease it from somebody at one time, or how did that work?
Do you know the history, Ms. Masuha-Colston?
I'm not sure that I know the full history unless the chief does.
Chief, go ahead.
Thank you. I believe it was transferred to us in 2009. It may have been leased for a few years before that when it was a joint building with a company that managed the park for about 3 years in 2006 to 2009. ODC. And so we leased half of it. And then when that dissolved and Infrastructure Ontario took over, we had the whole building then. So originally we had the apparatus bay and the west room as a meeting room. And then we got the whole thing at, I believe, 2009.
So
oh, sorry.
what's is there taxes on that property, or how does that work? Or are they due or paid up? And
Ms. Masuha-Colston?
So the municipality does own the property, purchased it from the province for $2. But the key was then this participation agreement and restrictive covenants ran with the land. So it was a nominal fee, but then we have to deal with the restrictive covenants. Okay.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments at this time? Councillor McLeod-Hagan.
sorry, mine is not with respect to option 3. This is just, is the property being monitored with respect to squatters, given the deterioration?
Chief?
Thank you for that question. The property is checked weekly by myself or the deputy, but it is checked and it is secure.
Thank you. Any other comments at this time? Okay, we have a mover and a seconder for this motion. There's no further discussion. I'll call the question. All in favor? And that carries with 7. Thank you. Moving along, Chief.
The next section's on the Dashwood Station. So again, a high level summary of the activities related to the station. And you can refer to the committee and council resolution documents for the details. But this started back in 2020 and has moved through there on different things. Next slide, please. So the existing Dashwood Station you see there on the map, the building sits directly on the property lines. Therefore, no addition or expansion capacity exists on the current property. This building, the original West Bay was built in 1954 with an addition in the late 70s behind it. And then the East Bay was built in the late 80s when there was an acquisition of another apparatus. So we've owned this, or this building's been in existence for since 1954. Next slide, please. So the preliminary building condition assessment findings, the facility condition index, which has been provided, shows at 22.5%, which is in poor condition. The findings for that station to replace the value of the building that's currently there is $575,000, and that replaces it with a similar style building, slab on grade with no high-end finishes, and the approximate capital expenditures looking at just under the $125,000. So the total annual operating budget is about $5,000. And just to note that the building condition assessments in draft form, subject to change, but we are reviewing the building condition assessments now with a plan to get all of them back to council in the early spring here. Next slide, please. So some notable concerns that were identified in the fire master plan is that 5.9.1 firefighter presumptive cancer. That South Huron Fire Department should be increasing their awareness of the industry best practices to ensure the long-term health and safety of its members is maintained by ensuring all staff are minimized to carcinogens throughout their career. With the known risk of exposure to the carcinogens, the South Huron Fire Department has not taken steps to minimize exposure to them by having diesel fume extraction systems in any of the fire stations, and that there is only one industrial washer extractor for turnout gear, which is located at the Exeter station. Also listed there is the OREG, firefighters under the Workplace Safety and Insurance Board, and the link to the WSIB Cancer and Firefighters and Fire Investigators. Next slide, please. Two concerns noted are the absence of the appropriate diesel exhaust extraction system for its apparatus and the appropriate bunker gear storage. And it was identified that these health and safety concerns should be addressed immediately. There is no decontamination shower facility in the station. The existing sewage disposal system is a holding tank. The station sits directly on the property lines, eliminating the possibility of any expansion. The vehicle bays lack space needed for essential maintenance indoors, and the office space is very limited. Recommendation number 32 was the fire station replacement suggested, for the Dashwood Fire Station in a 1 to 6 year timeline. Install an appropriate diesel exhaust extraction system at each fire station. There is no space within the existing facility to accommodate a diesel exhaust system. Each apparatus, having a hose hooked to the exhaust pipe. Again, how those systems work. The hose hooks to the exhaust pipe on the truck. It runs on a track towards the door. When when it gets to a certain point, it releases from the exhaust pipe. Keep in mind that station on the East Bay, the firefighters get dressed right there. They'd be getting knocked with the hose as the truck move forward. Another recommendation to install an appropriate negative pressure bunker gear storage room. There is no space within the facility to accommodate a negative pressure bunker gear storage room. Purchase a second industrial extractor and dryer and a separate general washer and dryer for regular washing of clothes. There is limited space within the existing facility. It would displace the office space and the meeting space that's there. Install a more powerful generator to allow for full building power capacity. Currently, it's a small generator on wheels that's wheeled out. Again, there's no space around the building. And install a male and female shower facility. There is no space within the existing facility to accommodate the installation of a shower facility. And since the sewage extraction system is a holding tank, it wouldn't be permitted to add more fixtures to that system. Next slide, please. Other pressures for that location: requirement for continued investment in the infrastructure and equipment to meet the legal obligations and maintain a strong risk management strategy. Potential moves of neighboring municipal fire stations. The fire agreements that we have with our partner municipalities. Recruitment and retention challenges. And limited space for fire operations and parking at the existing fire station. With our new recruits that started the other night, it was quite a challenge to navigate the apparatus in and out of the station because of the parking on this small residential street. Next slide, please. So through committee discussions, it was identified that the municipality owns lands in both Dashwood and Crediton, and that considerations to both potential locations should be explored. In addition to the lands, the committee reviewed the comparison of the locations and the potential impact to the level of service provided by the fire service in South Huron. Next slide, please. So on this slide, it identifies the comparison between the two locations. Having a move to Crediton would change the response area, would see a greater overlap into the Exeter area, and would have the majority of your firefighters traveling from Dashwood to that station. And the other thing is that two firefighters currently work in Dashwood in the daytime are from the Exeter station and are able to respond to the Dashwood station. So we're fortunate to have those partnerships with our employers. Any questions on that slide there?
Questions? Councillor Neeb, go ahead.
Just a question about response times, because there is a goal of being under the 10 minutes. What happens when responding and it goes over the 10 minutes?
Chief?
Thank you, Member Neeb, for that question. So the NFPA 1720 standard for rural firefighting dictates how many firefighters need to respond in so many minutes. And it's unknown at this time if it could be met due to the movement. We currently do have 4 firefighters that live in the town of Crediton. 3 of our new recruits have come from Crediton, but that's only 4 people. And the minimum number for the NFPA 1720 is 6 in a 10-minute response. So it's unknown if we could meet it, and I don't think it would be ever met at this time.
Councillor Vaughn, go ahead.
Yes, I did hear you refer to some of the newer people that we've just brought on. I'm just wondering, currently the FTE count, if you will, how many firefighters have we got attached to the Dashwood station?
Chief?
Thank you, Member Vaughn. Right now, 22.
Right now, 22.
22. And that's what we're slated to have. So some of the information from previous Council meetings would have showed 14 to 16, but we've increased that to 22 for that station.
Okay.
Counselor.
If I can follow up on that same question. Page 149 of the community risk assessment happens to say that the complement should be closer to 30 firefighters per station. And so you've just advised we're at 22. Are there any discussions about raising that level to get closer to that 30 number?
Yes, thank you, Member Vaughn. So we just took on 6 new members, which is what we received in applications. So again, there'd be a focus on recruitment again in the future, but we're only able to handle so many at a time. So we did hire 8, 2 for Exeter and 6 for Dashwood. Those were the numbers that we got in for applications.
Okay, I have a slightly unrelated question. Backing up to about 5 or 6 slides ago. Just give me a second to get back to that slide. Okay, you were talking about notable concerns and basically saying that we needed to fix this situation immediately. And I'm wondering, since we're obviously having a discussion now about potential new fire station, what your thoughts are in ability for us to actually fix anything immediately as it relates to Dashwood.
Chief.
Thank you, Member Vaughn. So the problem with the current location is that the recommendations can't be met. There just is no physical space or ability to meet those or to alleviate those issues.
Right, and so it talks specifically to the diesel exhaust extraction system, and I realize we don't have any room. But it was followed, this comment was followed with these health and safety concerns should be addressed immediately. And so I'm just trying to understand what the immediate.
That was a recommendation from the fire master plan, that it should be because of the known carcinogens in the exhaust.
Okay,
But unfortunately, there is no ability to add any type of system in there. We do have an exhaust fan that's activated when the trucks start, but that's the best that we can do at this time.
okay,
Thank you, Counselor.
thank you.
Yeah, and good, the fire master plan, when they made that recommendation, there was a timeline. Was it 1 to 3 years or 1 to 6 years or something? Chairman?
Yes, thank you, Member Oak. It was 1 to 3 years for the Exeter, or sorry, for the Dashwood station, and 1 to 6 for the Exeter, with the recommendations on that pertain to each building.
Thank you.
Any other questions at this time? Counselor Dietrich.
You mentioned there wouldn't be enough recruits in Crediton. Do you think for a minute that there wouldn't be more people interested in it if it was in Crediton?
Thank you, Member Dietrich. That's unknown at this time. We were able to get 3 new recruits from Crediton. But as far as anyone else, I'm not sure of. That's, like I said, that's the amount that applied.
And Chief, just on that vein, how long does it take to train a firefighter to be capable enough to go to calls?
So we just completed 14-week recruitment of our 8 new recruits. So that allows them now to attend training in the stations. They're still not certified. So they've still got to go off for the better part of 6 months on nights and weekends out of area. So right now we're currently using the Elgin Middlesex training facility. Most of that is in the St. Thomas area, the Southwold station or the Yarmouth Center station, but they do branch off to Port Burwell, Stratfordville, Glencoe, Strathroy. So these firefighters are gone on about a 6-month adventure, but a lot of homework at home as well. So I know last weekend they were Friday night they were gone. They don't get back till about 11 o'clock at night, and then they're gone again first thing early Saturday morning for a full day. So we're about 6 months before they are eligible to be certified. Fortunately, with the last hiring, we had one that was fully certified and one that's almost certified. So those are benefits that we'd like to take advantage of because that's a huge cost savings to the municipality and the department.
So are you saying that the firemen that were in Crediton and Huron Park, they're outdated? Like there might be some of them that would be interested in coming back to Crediton or whatever?
So again, they were able to apply, but they would have to start fresh if they don't have any certifications. And if they weren't grandfathered previous to that, then like I said, they'd have to start fresh.
Chief, just on that vein again, how many firefighters were left in the Huron Park Station before it closed? And how many were in the service, living in the service area?
Sorry, how many were?
Sorry, how many firefighters, when the Huron Park Station closed, how many firefighters are actually reporting to that location? Was it 12?
12, I believe.
And 3 of them were outside the service area? That's
There
correct.
was a lot more than, there was 3 that lived outside of the county and there was 4 that lived outside of the service area. 4 that lived in Exeter and 3 that lived in, 1 in London, 1 in Elsa Craig and 1 in Brinsley.
Thank you. Councilor.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So of the 3 new recruits that were in the Crediton or in the Crediton area, and part of the you know, when you're looking at the different sites is being available during the day as well. Of those 3 recruits, do they actually work in the Crediton area, or where would they work?
Thank you, Member Oak. No, they don't work in the Crediton area. They're some that are close by, but they're not in Crediton. One's in Hensel. One is one of the person works outside of Park Hill and the other one works in London. There is 2 other that live between Dashwood and Crediton. One is mobile and one works at home 3 days a week. The other 2 days she's in London.
Thank you.
And Chief, just on that vein again, please compare what it would like to be hired as a firefighter in 1954 when the station was built to 1980 to today's current standards. What would be required?
I wasn't around in 1954.
What the stories you could tell.
Ironically enough, in 1954, my grandfather was the fire chief in Dashwood, and I don't imagine there was much equipment, but they bought a new truck in 1954, and that truck still exists today by a gentleman that's sitting behind me in the crowd. They wore trench coats and long boots and plastic helmets. And
Sorry.
and 1 SCBA to share between all members of the department. And that came in long after 1954. And when I say a plastic helmet, I mean a plastic helmet. And I do have one on my shelf at home, but the standards for the equipment have changed. The knowledge of fire has changed. The knowledge of the dangers that we are exposed to every day has changed. 30 years ago when I started, we didn't have the protective equipment that we do now. They gave us a hood 30 years ago to keep us warm in the wintertime. That was actually to keep the stuff off of our skin around our face. But that's how much things have changed. We've gone from wearing long trench coats to actually pants with gauntlets around your ankles to keep the toxins from coming up your legs, gauntlets around your wrists to keep it from going up your arms. Numerous SCBAs, self-contained breathing apparatus. That's the tank on your back so you can breathe clean air. The days are long gone of eating smoke and being a hero and coming out with a black face. That's not something that we're proud of any longer. And the training has become, drastically increased. I know as a young child, I think they practiced once a month and now we're at twice a month. And are we meeting the standards? We're just scraping by. But we have to remember that our members have jobs and children and sports and stuff like that. So we are meeting our standards. We're extremely fortunate to be in the position that we're in with our certifications. A lot of our firefighters have met those certifications in the years past, but training has changed drastically. So anything that you learned back in those days, it's more than 100 times the requirements now. And all that's documented and all that, goes to make sure that we're meeting a standard and that we're protecting the citizens and the community.
And again, just the presumptive cancer, can you just explain when that became something, became an item?
Presumptive cancers, this is something that started a long time ago. And
It's okay, chief, no problem. Thank you. I just see it here recorded. Any other questions at this time?
I'll get back to you on that.
I'm sorry? Councillor Dietrich.
I happen to hear our, let me get this right now, transportation supervisor. We were out, mentioned he'd like a little more building out at the Osborne yard. And we had a road tour last year and we come back to the Stephen yard. And he said he was not spending too much money on that building. So I'm wondering if it wouldn't be cheaper to put a couple of bays on at the Osborne shed for him and use the present building that's in the Stephen yard there for some of the fire department's things, or even the station or whatever. How many bays does it take for a fire station?
Chief, if you could respond, I'm not sure, is that in the fire master plan?
So that was not recommended in the fire master plan. It is something that the committee did look at. The building itself would need extensive renovations. I believe we're looking at a 32-year-old building there. Again, washroom and shower facilities aren't included in that, diesel exhaust system. So whether that building itself would work, it would take an extensive renovation and probably very much similar amount of money. Again, to move into another building, the fire station's mandated under the Ontario Building Code to be disaster proof. So that's something that would have to be looked at as well. And again, the requirements to bring it up to a standard for the fire station, they haven't been weighed out, but it would likely cost just as much to build a new building. And again, you know, the Fire Chiefs Association of Ontario, they're very big on the cancer prevention. It's something that's been going for probably close to 20 years. The presumptive list gets bigger every year. And the actual years of service are actually coming down. So before you had to be a member of a fire service for 20 years or a fire investigator, there's a lot of cancers now that are down to 15.
Thank you, and Councillor Oak.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I know as a committee, we looked at the Crediton facility as far as, you know, what might work there or not work there. But could you also comment on the, we have agreements with neighboring municipalities and just what, if for some reason that if we decide to move a station to Crediton, how would that affect the agreements that we have with our neighboring municipalities?
Thank you, Member Oak. So currently we have an agreement with the municipality of Blue Water, which sees us covering a portion. The maps are on the screens there. So anything north of the Dashwood Road. So both stations do respond into a large portion of Blue Water. And we just renegotiated that contract, Deputy Mayor, 2 years ago. Maybe it's close to 3 now. But that was a long process to get to that agreement. So that agreement has Blue Water paying into our capital costs for equipment and apparatus. So they pay their proportionate share to that. The movement out of that area, it would put the Dashwood Road 2 kilometers closer to the Zurich station than the Crediton location. So I can't see that agreement lasting. I would think that that's something that they would relook at. It would also keep in mind if the station was moved, we would likely have to repay their portions of those capital purchases over the last number of years. The other agreement that we have, and we're currently working on a renewal with the municipality of Lambton Shores. We're going to be going to an automatic aid agreement, which means that the Grand Bend station will provide coverage to an area in South Huron, which they're geographically closer to. So anything short or to the north, east of the Corbett line, and the south of southeast of Grand Bend. So Mullard line to Greenway, 81 Highway, and then again out to the Corbett line. In this proposed agreement that we are working with Lambton Shores would see the need for the South Huron Fire Station, excuse me, to respond to those calls as well, because we are the home department. So they would respond as a first response, and then we would be summoned at the same time, and then we would take over and they would return to their home area. That's the automatic aid agreement that's legislated out there. So we're currently working through that. We have had some meetings. And again, Deputy Mayor's been the liaison with in those meetings with Lambton Shores and ourselves. Any questions on those agreements or
Questions?
how they work?
Members of council? Councillor Dietrich, go ahead.
So with the Grand Bend department, will they be doing similar to the Blue Water? Like they won't be assisting like with any suiting or material that you need for the men? Or do we have to pay them some towards their department?
Thank you, Member Dietrich. So that would cease. There would be no input into the capital, into the Lambton Shore Station. It would be a fee per household and an MTO rate per apparatus that responds to the initial response. I believe it was $120 and change. I can't give you the exact number, but it was per $120 per something per household, and then the MTO rate, which goes up with CPI every year. I think we're around the $510 right now for the MTO rate. So they would handle the medical emergencies and the smoke alarm calls. Anything over that, we would be attending as well.
Thank you, Councillor Oak.
And there's lots of rumors swirling around, and there's some rumors about potential relocation of the Lambton Shores Station. There's some rumblings, so just if they were to move that station, then that also changes coverage levels as well, if they happen to relocate.
Thank you, Member Oak. Yes, there's lots of talk out there, whether that happens or not. It was a high level conversation that we had with Lambton Shores. I don't think there's any plans in the next 30, 60, 90 days. I don't know what they're going to do next year. But there was conversation about that. There was a high level conversation about a joint EMS fire building because EMS did a master plan and they're looking at moving their EMS base out of Grand Bend as well. And I have reached out to Huron County EMS to see if there was possibly a need if we were to do something in the south to the west, because they're currently staffed in Exeter and Zurich. So it's something that they had indicated maybe a standby location if that was available in the future.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor McLeod-Haggett.
So just more for a due diligence on my side here, looking at the difference for the Dashwood and the Crediton potential locations. We have a building in Crediton. Has it been considered or looked at that we look at the Crediton location as an option and having the Dashwood current fire station as a satellite with 1 or 2 trucks staying in Dashwood, with growing potentially at the works location in Crediton, and with potentially the firefighters traveling with their equipments. There are some fire stations that do have the firefighters carry the equipment with them and then do the switch out wash for in between fires.
Chief.
Thank you, Member McLeod-Haggett. So we did explore Crediton. There is a sewage waste system on that property that would need to be relocated if there was an expansion or another building added to that property. Again, the building has no showers, and very similar. If the Dashwood station, as you indicated, would stay as a satellite station, there would still need to be improvements. And there is no sewage disposal at that location. So the building official advised that no more units could be added to that system because of the lack of sewage disposal system. So I'm not sure if that's going to improve anything for us. And as far as carrying the gear, the last thing we want is firefighter gear in their personal vehicles. There's companies out there that will not lease you a vehicle if they know if you're a firefighter, because you return that vehicle and that vehicle could be contaminated. So we don't recommend any fire equipment carried in personal vehicles. It does happen from time to time, but it's definitely not a recommendation. And that's also putting the firefighters' personal insurance at risk as well. So.
Thank you. Any other questions? Chief, please proceed.
Okay. So again, we were on the map location there. You can see the current stations and the implications if it was moved. Like I said, it would definitely change. It does cost money to change boundaries. It's not cheap, and it's something that's a long-term process with Bell. They don't move it tomorrow type of thing. It's something you have to give them notice, and it's $5,000. The last time we did it, it was $5,000 per polygon. So they break out the municipality into polygons. And what that is that's how calls are routed. So each polygon has all the PSAP information. So the police, fire, ambulance, and they know where to route that call to. So they've got that all. That's kind of something in the 911 world of the county that gets looked after. But it is a costly adventure to look at boundary changes. So just so we have that as well.
Councillor Oak, go ahead, please.
Yeah, thank you. And so if a station was to relocate, I know just in my world day to day, there's always involvement with insurance companies. And I guess just can you comment, on if a station is located further away from a residence, how that might affect their insurance?
Chief?
Thank you, Member Oak. Not being a professional in the insurance industry, I'm not sure, but it would increase it. We constantly, on a regular basis, receive calls from insurance companies, not only asking where the closest fire hydrant is, but where the closest responding station is. We also just completed the fire service underwriters survey information, and that's what sets the rates for the insurance in the municipality. So it looks at age of our apparatus, how many firefighters we have, how many certified firefighters we have, what our turnout times are. And, like I said, the station locations, how quick you can actually get to somewhere. The one other thing was the Superior Tanker Shuttle, which was also a recommendation in the Fire Master Plan that we passed a number of years ago. And we won't have a problem if we were to go down that road again, but that's something that does give insurance companies a break if we're certified in the tanker accreditation.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Okay, please proceed, Chief.
So recommendations related to the station location, Fire Master Plan recommendation number 33, to better serve the community, emergency management and training recommends that a new Dashwood Fire Station be built and located in the vicinity of the south end of Dashwood. This would replace the present Dashwood Station. And the Fire Service Advisory Committee resolutions 1323, that staff include a 2024 budget amount of 100,000 for the site preparation work at 177 Center Street, Dashwood as the preferred location for the replacement Dashwood Fire Station. And 14-2023, that staff include a 2024 budget amount of 315,000 allocated to the Fire Capital Reserve for the replacement Dashwood Fire Station at 177 Center Street, Dashwood. Next slide, please. So on 177 Center Street, it is the municipality currently owns one property that's suitable in that area that was recommended by the Fire Master Plan. And that size of parcel can accommodate a replacement fire station. The Fire Master Plan also recommended a South Huron Fire Department training facility that could also be accommodated at this site. Currently, the Dashwood Station uses that property for training, as it hasn't had organized sports in over 10 years. And we also use the clubhouse building for our last recruit class. So we use our smoke machine to fill it full of the fog fluid, and they did search and rescue in that building. So it's actually we've been using it for a number of years since it hasn't been used. So we've been maintaining it, keeping it clean and so forth. So it actually has worked out well, and it's something that, if that was the site that is chosen, it would be nice to keep it there, and we could add our stuff to it. Currently, we have a roof simulator and a forcible entry door behind the Huron Park Fire Station that we currently still use for training. It's stuff that could be moved to a different site. Pros to this one versus the Exeter site, there's nobody around that. So when I say forcible entry, it's a steel door and you're actually smashing it with a sledgehammer. So you can imagine that loud ting, ting, ting. Behind the fire station in Exeter probably wouldn't go over well with our 3-story neighbors next door or the residential development behind, or a chainsaw running to cut the force or in the roof simulator. So this here is, like I said, on the edge of town and would be a good suitable location for that. Next slide, please. I'm going to turn this over to Julia.
Welcome, Julia, whenever you're ready.
Thank you. Through the chair. So at this point in time, we just wanted to provide a very high level overview of known available funding sources at this time. So through the 2024 budget process, there were committed amounts to the Dashwood Fire Station replacement. As previously mentioned, $315,000 was allocated to come from the working fund reserve to put into the capital replacement reserve towards this project. And then there was an amenity fee reserve allocation of $100,000 to put towards site prep and that kind of thing. Other available sources, the future tax levies would be an available source. Grants are another source. So Dashwood Fire Station would be eligible for the CCBF, that's formerly the gas tax, but it would not be eligible for the OCIF funding. And then there could also be exploration of other grant availability when the project is scoped. Debt is another available source. So based on ranges discussed within the Fire Services Committee for ranges of the budget of this project, we anticipate that at least a portion of the fire station will need to be debt financed, and there is room available within our legislated ARL and South Huron's debt management policy thresholds to fund a portion through debt. Another available source would be DC charges. However, only growth-related components of the project would be eligible for growth, and the majority of these expenses will likely be replacement of existing and therefore not eligible for DC funding. Other available sources are reserves. So a few listed here are the wind turbine amenity fee reserves, fire capital replacement reserve, and the Huron Park Fire Department specific reserve. These amounts listed here are the total amounts available in that reserve. So it's not just amounts that have been earmarked for this project or anything like that. For example, the fire capital replacement reserve is to replace all assets in the fire department, not just specific to this project. So I don't know if there are any questions.
Questions for our director? Councillor Vaughn.
Yeah, thanks, Julia. Just wanted to ask a question about item 3 on your notes where you're talking about the only growth related components of the project would be eligible. And I see that you said that we're actually just replacing existing, but we're not actually replacing existing. We're probably talking about a sizable change to the scope of the fire hall. And while there aren't huge numbers of new residential dwellings, there in the Dashwood area, there are some, and even some commercial new amenities in Dashwood. So I'm just wondering, when you say that only growth related components, I'm not quite sure how deep we've drilled down to what is growth in Dashwood and what DCs we might be able to use.
Go ahead.
Through the chair. So actually this year we are going to be in the process of redoing our DC background study, and those kinds of in-depth calculations would be something that would be incorporated in that study process. So the consultants that we would hire would look at growth projections, would look at the project, the scope of the detail of the project, and determine what percentage of the estimated project cost would be growth related and therefore eligible for DC funding.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, not seeing any. Thank you.
So given the extensive involvement of the Fire Service Advisory Committee, members in the Fire Master Plan and discussions related to It's staff's recommendation that the mandate of the terms of reference for this committee be revised to focus on the scope and design of a replacement Dashwood Fire Station should the project be approved by council. Next slide, please. And the replacement location, staff recommendation to proceed with the replacement of the Dashwood Fire Station located within the village of Dashwood at 177 Center Street, which are municipally owned lands. Next slide, please. Next steps for staff recommendation, a revised committee terms of reference recommendation that the Fire Service Advisory Committee terms of reference be revised to focus on the scope and design of the replacement of the Dashwood Fire Station should it be approved by council. And replacement planning recommendation regarding station replacement investigations by staff in the committee, including location cost, allocation funding, and the overall project scope. And recommendations for a staff report be brought back to council within 90 days of this approval.
Thank you. Comments, questions? Councillor Dietrich?
What did the people in the village think about this lot here? Do they have any say in it, or like who come up with this?
This property, Member Dietrich was looked at as it's the only municipal owned property that's sizable enough to do what we need to do, and that it hasn't been used for organized sports in over 10 years. Unfortunately, it is the only municipally owned land that we currently have.
That's not really what I asked. The people of the village, what did they think about it? They're all for this, or any comments one way or the other?
There's a lot of comments back and forth, and a lot of comments that we need a fire service. So I don't know what the next steps would be if you're requesting anything more on that, but there's definitely support to have a fire station there.
Great, thank you. Any other questions at this time? Councillor Neeb.
Thank you, Mayor Finch. Just more of a statement. We've been having these discussions for the last 3 years or so. I've had the privilege of sitting on the committee with Deputy Mayor and Councillor Oak while we work through all the ideas with location, having extensive discussions about our legislative responsibilities. You know, we've had fire master plan, community risk assessment. We can go further back to 2012 to see there was also a recommendation to replace the Dashwood Fire Station. That's 12 years ago. The replacement discussion has been going long enough. We have all of the information we need, I think, in order to make a discussion. It's time to make a decision. So the current footprint does not allow for the necessary upgrades in order to facilitate a modern and safe station for our firefighters. We need to look at this as an investment in South Huron, because a lot of the time we have 2 stations responding to fires, both Dashwood and Exeter. This is for the good of the entire municipality. We need to make sure that all our residents have this facility and that our firefighters have the facilities that they need in order to respond effectively. Moving the station does not allow them to respond effectively. Waiting for recruitment does not allow our firefighters to respond effectively. We also have an agreement with Blue Water that would need to be changed significantly. We receive a lot of capital money in exchange for our agreement by having the fire hall where it is in Dashwood. Now is not the time to flip-flop. We have to embrace what our communities need. Both communities, Exeter and Dashwood, need adequate firefighting facilities. This is an investment that will benefit our community for the next 50 years. So while we may look at the cost and say, this is too much, this is a cost that will pay off over the next 50 years. That's all I have to say.
Deputy.
Thank you. I guess my question is timeline. What are we looking at? in there, it says 1 to 6 years, like, to me, that's a long time to wait when we got all these problems, in the fire station in Dashwood. So I guess, who makes the decision on the timeline and when we actually move forward with, this project? Because I'm kind of a little bit like, Councillor Member Neeb. I've been here, around here a long time, and there's been a lot of discussions about a new fire station, and it's not necessarily, I'm not saying one place or the other, but I'm saying that something, we need a replacement. He mentioned Exeter and Dashwood, but we also have an agreement with Lambton Shores in Grand Bend, and that's a huge area of protection that we have to have. And it's not, we can't always depend on Lambton Shores for that production. We need to have our own station ready to go at the call, which they do now. So I'm just wondering who makes the decision and when the decision is made to move forward. Thank
Well,
you.
ultimately, council makes the decision, but I'll turn to Chief for a comment.
Thank you, Member Dietrich, for that comment. The recommendation, of the Fire Master Plan was 1 to 3 years for Dashwood. We're already at the third year. So I think that, you know, the recommendations that we've have in there as staff would see it go back to a committee to come up with the next steps. But it's definitely something, you've hit all the keynotes there. And just wanted to echo one of Councilor Member Neeb's comments. You know, this is a station for the whole municipality. It's not just Dashwood and it's not just Exeter. Both of these stations protect the whole municipality. And a 2-station response is not something that's uncommon to rural Ontario, and it's definitely not uncommon to South Huron. So we're working through all those challenges operationally, but this is something for the whole municipality.
Thank you. And I'll just turn to our CEO for a moment.
And I acknowledge all of that, but I'd also like to, the committee to remember that you also established a committee in order to deal with the Fire Master Plan recommendations. Council also, through the budget, provided funds towards the replacement of the Dashwood station. So there has been some movement. However, we're at the point now where the committee is reporting out to council or to the committee of the whole, and then the committee of the whole can make decisions to report to council. And that is one of the reasons that staff have put in the within 90 days to come back to council with some kind of a proposal on the scope. And at that point, there's already funds for this year, if needed, in the operational for site prep, if we get that far. And then it would take some time in order to get the proposal RFPs. So as far as timelines, it could be 2025 or later, if approved.
Councilor.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you, Rebecca, for summarizing that. I guess staff has made a number of recommendations here. I think the time we need to make a recommendation. And I think I'd like to make a recommendation to council that we reinstate identify the terms of reference for the advisory committee to look at the scope and replacement of the Dashwood Hall or Dashwood Fire Station at the 177 Center Street, and that the committee would work with staff to come back with the costing based on a design to council. And at that time, we take a look at the total cost and budget. Some wording like that to move forward here.
Okay, thank you. Are there any more comments at this time before we go to an actual motion here? Councillor Bond, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I'd just like to say that I support everything that Councillor Member Oak has said. The only other thing that I'd kind of like to add to that is that we did talk about in Julia's financial piece, 2 of the grants, that one works, one doesn't. Also, I know we've talked a bit about FCM as an opportunity potentially. So I'd just like to make the comment that I'd like to see some commentary about grants. And Also, just to follow that a little bit further, one of the elements of the FCM that I did like was the fact that FCM was also putting the whole look of energy efficiency and climate change slant on fire halls that were being built across the country. So I'd just like to see that as a part of it.
Thank you, Councillor Oak.
Yeah, no, good idea. We did have a person come from FCM that talked about some of the different grant opportunities as one of our committee meetings that we had. So depending on the next steps in that, that would be something that the person was interested in working with us to see if there would be some opportunities with FCM. So great idea.
Thank you. Any other comments at this time? Councillor McLeod-Haga, please.
I would like to see us move forward with what Member Oak is saying, just not for that, but for the safety of the firefighters. There's more female firefighters. They definitely need to be accommodated. So I would definitely like to see this push forward in a timely fashion.
Thank you. Any other comments? Councillor Dietrich.
I didn't have the opportunity to sit in with the advisory committee, so there's always things said at a committee meeting that don't get out here. So I would like to know who's going to have the final say on the design of this building, the advisory committee or the whole of council?
Ms. Sue Colson, do you want to comment?
Through the chair, it will be council. The advisory committee will just draft up the scope. It will be provided to council for final approval. Okay, yeah.
And just on that vein too, if I can go to the chief, are not most fire departments or fire halls designed similarly? Is that correct?
Thank you through the mayor there. There are lots of different options, drive-through bays, back-in bays, different things like that. As a committee, we did do a tour of some locations, but there's some other locations that I'd like the committee to see as well, because there's some different styles and there's some more cost-effective buildings that we can do something with versus, I don't want a Taj Mahal. I want something that's going to function, that's going to operate, and it's going to meet the needs and the health and safety for our firefighters for the next 40 and 50 years, long after I'm here.
Thank you. Any other comments? Yeah, I'm going to speak to this deputy. Okay. First of all, I'd like to say I totally agree with Councillor or Member Neeb on the discussion he just had there. We have all had the opportunity to review the fire master plan and the associated documents and resolutions related to our fire services. Several things should be abundantly clear to all of us. That the need for a new fire hall in Dashwood is absolutely imperative for many, many reasons and needs to be completed as soon as possible. This is about public safety, which we as council have full carriage of responsibility. Most importantly, ensuring proper facilities for our heroic staff or volunteers, professional volunteers. And it also is the cost of doing business. We are not living in the past as the playbook has changed in how fire services are delivered and how staff are deployed. The location has been decided by the fire master plan as part of the overall review. This takes the guesswork out of it for us as council. In other words, we need to stay out of the weeds when it comes to where it goes. We don't tell them the style of truck they need or the type of safety equipment they should use. So why would we confuse the matter with us telling them where to put the station or how to position the trucks at either station? Unless you have responded to fire calls and bunker gear, then we need to remain out of that discussion. Otherwise, we are complicating the matter, slowing it down or even micromanaging, which is not our role in providing governance. We would actually be going against the stated recommendations, and that could lead to civil liability in the future. And quite honestly, irresponsible for us to even force the issue as to its location. In other words, keep it simple. Our job is to decide, do we need a new fire hall or not? If the answer is yes, then our job is to empower staff by using the consultant's report to move it forward, since the firefighters are the ones that are going to be using it and already understand the system. There is huge risk to response times by providing uneducated guesses as to the location. It should also be abundantly clear to all of us that at this council table that we are not experts. when it comes to fire services. And quite honestly, that's just a fact. We rely on experts that we pay tax dollars to as consultants. In this case, my understanding is over $100,000 has been spent on consultants and staff time. We are certainly entitled to our opinions, but opinions are very dangerous when there are no evidence-based reports to support our opinions as individuals. Hence why we hire the consultants. We can never take a wild guess at these incredibly important decisions. The residents in the Stephen Ward deserve the highest level of protection that they are currently receiving, but it takes leadership from councils who are committed to public safety to achieve this. This is not going to fix itself, and it's not going to get cheaper to kick the can down the road like it has for the last nearly 12 years. Plus, it will impact morale of these incredible employees and volunteers and thereby impact public safety if service levels drop. I'm not interested in losing the strong service that we have with our fire services. We are already at #1 currently with morale and response times, which takes years to build up. Let's not forget when we spend dollars. We spent almost $8 million in 2 old arenas that service less than 10% of our population used for 7 months of the year, which is not even a core service, whereas fire services, most importantly, is. This decision is the most simplest one we can make since the fire services impacts every single resident every day and visitor every day of the year. Our CAO is responsible for identifying the needs to efficiently operate the municipality in accordance with the laws that govern us. This includes health and safety, hence why we all sit in a heated and safe building to make those decisions. But it's our responsibility as council to discuss the recommendations openly. And we should be fully aware that we have a legal and independent responsibility as directors of this corporation and are ultimately responsible as individuals when we cast our vote, which makes the recorded vote very valuable for full accountability. And you will recall that on March 18th, 2024, a month ago, we all publicly stood behind these professional volunteer firefighters when several received their milestone awards, including 2 for 50 years of service at the Dashwood Station alone. And they are here tonight. We need to reaffirm this again tonight. The time for talking about this and the time for thinking about this or asking for more information is well past what is realistic. I believe we need to come back tonight with a recommendation to us as council to establish clear instructions on moving ahead as expeditiously as possible. I feel that we need to show true leadership and empower our employees to get this done because that is what the public and our employees expect of us. The firefighters and the public need to know we stand with them. I will be asking for a recorded vote on this matter. Thank you. Very well. Any other comments? Mr. Carlson, any comments? I'm gonna turn to Madam Clerk for the resolution.
That South Huron Committee of the Whole recommends to council that the Fire Service Advisory Committee terms of reference be revised to focus on the scope and design of the replacement Dashwood Fire Station. And that South Huron Committee of the Whole recommend to council that the Fire Services Advisory Committee and staff investigate a station replacement, including location at 177 Center Street, Dashwood, cost allocation and funding, including grant opportunities and overall project scope. And that a staff report be brought back to council regarding the above within 90 days of approval.
Councillor Oak, are you making that motion?
I so move.
So moved. Seconder, please. Councillor McLeod Haggett, any discussion? Very well. Madam Clerk, when you're ready.
Councillor Need,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Dietrich,
Yes.
Microphone, please. Jim, your microphone.
Yes.
Councillor McLeod Haggett,
Yes.
Councillor Vaughn,
Yes.
Mayor Finch,
Yes.
Councillor Dietrich,
Yes.
and Councillor Oak.
Yes.
That carries 7-0.
Thank you. Ms. Masua Coulson, and thank you very much from the gallery. Ms. Masua Coulson.
That South Huron Committee of the Whole receives the fire services presentation and associated attachments for information.
And a mover, please. Counselor Neeb, second by Counselor Dietrich. Any discussion? Call the question, all in favor? That carries a 7. Thank you. And Ms. Masuko second.
That South Huron Committee of the Whole does now adjourn at 5:51, PM.
Moved by Deputy Mayor, second by Counselor Neeb. Any discussion? Call the question, all in favor? And that carries with 7. Thank you. And thank you very much to the folks in the gallery